I wonder how relevant this will be. The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya was that anime for me. The anime that took me from someone who just watched what came on Toonami to someone who used what barely functioning internet connection I had to discover the true scope of what this genre could do, showing me something more than the ridiculous card game or over-the-top battle anime that I'd grown up with. At the time, it was one of the most popular anime in the world, indoctrinating many unsuspecting weebs into the cult of Haruhism and an obsession with a certain dance. Though I genuinely wonder how many modern anime fans have even heard about it outside of whispers of the Endless Eight, or if they even know about that. So now feels like a perfect time for a retrospective and look back at this iconic anime of the 2000s. This video though is going to be squarely focused on the anime. I'll be upfront at the top about this, I've never read the light novel this whole series originates from, or the manga that also exists. My experience with this franchise completely revolves around the anime, the first season of which aired back in 2006, with the second season hitting the scene a few years later in 2009. Capped off with the movie The Disappearance of Haruhi Suzumiya, all animated by one of my absolute favorite studios in the industry in Kyoto Animation, or Kyoani for short. There are so many places where I could start, but let's begin this with what the show is even about. Before all that though, this is my little plug to say, if you like anime discussions, retrospectives, you want to see more of this kind of content, then please subscribe, hit the bell, let me know that you want to see this, like, comment, do all that kind of YouTube things, because it really helps, one, the videos get out to more and more people, and helps my channel grow, as so I can dedicate more resources to improving and working on these kind of videos. And also, it's really nice to see that kind of support and see what people want to see from me. Thank you very much for dealing with this plug, and let's just get right back to Haruhi. Kyoani is a typical Japanese teen just starting high school who really wants a normal, calm life. But the universe has other plans as he's seated next to the eccentric Haruhi Suzumiya, a girl with one goal: to find aliens, time travelers, and espers to prevent the world from being boring. Now Haruhi isn't just some girl with delusions of grandeur and an obsession with the occult. She's a straight-A student and athletically gifted, able to excel in any club she joins. If she wanted, she could be the most popular kid in school, but she doesn't have time for any of that. Typically, she's very quiet, abrupt, and downright rude to nearly everyone, completely uninterested in the boring world around her. She never smiles or laughs or shows any visible emotion outside of anger. Her attitude makes her far too intimidating for anyone to approach, that is, except for Kyoani. While everyone else keeps their distance, Kyoani just starts asking her questions, like about why she keeps changing her hairstyle every day of the week, understanding her strange offbeat logic and talking to her as an equal and not an oddity. This simple act cracks her shell and unleashes the true one and only Haruhi Suzumiya, letting out this energetic force ready to take on the world and start her own school club, the SOS Brigade, a club dedicated to discovering aliens, time travelers, and espers, and all sorts of paranormal events. Its true mission is to prevent the world from being a boring place. She quickly forms her club with people she's found around school, like Yuki Nagato, a quiet stone-faced bookworm who is the sole member of the literary club, whose room Haruhi decides to hijack along with Yuki herself. There's Makuro Asahina, a shy upperclassman Haruhi found while wandering around school, who she forces to join the club because, as she says, moe is an important concept to keep in mind. And Asahina was far too cute for Haruhi to ignore. And lastly, Itsuki Koizumi, who recently transferred to their high school like 2 months after the start of classes, and Haruhi of course found that mysterious, so in he goes. Also, Kyoani has to join because he's the one who accidentally gave Haruhi the idea to start the club in the first place, so in he goes. But one by one, each member of the club reveals to Kyoani that they aren't there by accident. See, Yuki is actually an alien, Asahina is a time traveler, and Koizumi is an esper. And they've all been sent to observe Haruhi as things are far more serious than Kyoani ever could have known. According to Koizumi, the world they live in is actually about 3 years old, the previous world being destroyed and replaced with this one after Haruhi subconsciously desired for the world to be more interesting. So now espers, aliens, and time travelers exist. Though Haruhi, who is actually a far more practical and down-to-earth person than she lets on, doesn't actually believe in any of them, so she has no idea that they're right by her side the entire time. This basically makes Haruhi a god, and trust me, there's a whole lot more we can get into here, but there's no time for it. Because the show then becomes Kyoani, our narrator through these misadventures, working with the rest of the SOS Brigade to understand the frequent strange scenarios that appear around Haruhi, with Kyoani as the only person Haruhi even kind of listens to, or who understands her own weird way of thinking, having to take the lead in keeping the world as they know it from completely ending. If you change the genre of this show, it could really work as a dark existential horror instead of a lighthearted semi-slice-of-life anime. Haruhi as a character she has no respect for boundaries or the wants and desires of others. She is an incredibly self-centered and driven person, focused on her needs above everybody else's, only occasionally being able to be talked off some of her more eccentric ideas by Kyoani. Like, take her treatment of Asahina. She's frequently groping her or forcing her to get into outfits for club activities with very little regard for how she feels about it. This can make the show at times a bit hard to watch, as it does point out that Haruhi is in the wrong for doing these things, while also taking the opportunity to show Asahina in her underwear or in sexy outfits. It tries to have it both ways, demonizing the activity while taking time to showcase Asahina's body for the audience. This scenario happens a lot, especially in season 1 of the anime. These are parts where the anime kind of shows its age, with actions that most modern viewers and even anime fans would find incredibly distasteful. Like the time she blackmails the computer club by making it look like the leader assaulted and groped Asahina, when in reality Haruhi made up the whole situation and took pictures of it. We'll circle back to this whole thing later, but let's push forward for now. When Haruhi hit the scene, it was at a formative moment for anime in the West. For much of my young life, there was anime involved in one way or the other, but the scope of that anime was very, very narrow. There were shows like Pokemon, Digimon, Yu-Gi-Oh! All in these Saturday morning cartoon blocks. Then in the evening, Toonami would hit the scene with more mature kind of anime, with Dragon Ball Z, Yu Yu Hakusho, Sailor Moon. You'd get Trigun, Rurouni Kenshin, you'd get Zoids. You of course had Miyazaki movies that were in wide distribution through Disney, and access to a few other series or OVAs through Blockbuster. Things like Akira or Ninja Scroll. But this was a small drip of very select and specific shows. Almost entirely shonen with a dash of seinen action anime on Adult Swim. Now, sure, some people had access to more than that, but the fan sub and localization community before the internet was not something I or many people in my age range had access to. That is until broadband internet. By 2005, you had sites like Vimeo and YouTube just starting out, and then Crunchyroll hit the scene in about 2006. Now, you hear Crunchyroll, you may be thinking to yourself, oh, that's a nice legal streaming service to watch anime on. Yeah, no. Crunchyroll was what I and many young anime fans used to watch illegal fan-subbed uploads. This and YouTube mainly. They would clean up their act later and secure streaming rights and partnerships, but it was not a subscription service, and Funimation wasn't streaming at all. Those just did home releases and dubbed anime for Toonami. Netflix and Hulu were racing their way onto the scene in the next couple years, but their anime offerings, especially at the start, were pitiful. Streaming just wasn't a thing, and DVDs were expensive and hard to come by. So these sites gave a whole new generation an easily accessible way to find new anime, and it's this landscape that ushered in the reign of Haruhi. With a true method of mass distribution available, even if it was by less than legal means, it was easier than ever for anyone to just be clicks away from experiencing a one-of-a-kind ridiculous story. Soon people all over were learning the signature dance at the end of each episode, the Hara Hara Yukai, or scrambling to find translations of the light novels. AMVs, or anime music videos, were everywhere, taking extreme advantage of the God knows sequence in the anime where Yuki and Haruhi get up on stage in the school festival and play a few rock songs. This sequence really feels like the precursor to Kyoani. It still absolutely slaps to this day, and we're gonna get to the music later. Trust me, we're gonna get to it. I want to make something else entirely clear. Haruhi's success is not entirely random. The light novel series Haruhi is based on is incredibly popular. Its sales making all other light novels at the time, and even now, look like small potatoes. While I personally have never really been much of a light novel person, I only own one light novel, and it's Toradora, because I love Toradora. You should watch my Toradora video. It's in the eye here. Check it out. It's a huge market in Japan, and you see more and more anime these days based off of light novels. For those of you who aren't aware, light novels are pretty self-explanatory. They're pretty short novels meant for the YA young adult kind of demographic. They're light reads and thus light novels. I'm not sure if that's where the name comes from, but that's what makes sense in my head. The level of success Haruhi had in Japan absolutely made it easier to translate over into the West. But the level of impact it had on the Western anime scene is really hard to understate. Even though I personally came to the show a little late, around 2008, 2009, when I first started to have real quality internet access, I am fairly certain that I'd never seen a slice of life anime. Like I said earlier, the anime I was exposed to as a kid was, for the majority, big action anime. So school life dramas and school festivals and summer vacation stories just weren't something I'd really seen before. Of course, now I know that these are very commonplace, and Haruhi was not the first anime to use these tropes by far. But at the time, it was really refreshing to see an anime centered around a more down-to-earth high school life. Not that Haruhi is the most down-to-earth, but we're grading on a scale here. This exposure to the more chilled-down aspects of anime prepared me for some of my favorite shows, like Toradora or A Silent Voice. I feel like it set the tone for more slice-of-life, non-action anime to fill the scene. Like Kyoani is a great example of another Kyoani production about an all-girls music club in school. This expanded scene made it much easier to bring in new people who just weren't interested in your Narutos or your Dragon Ball Z screaming matches. And hey, I love these series as well, but sometimes you just need something new. It would be a disservice to Kyoani, though, to credit all of this success to the accessibility of pirating, or of a relatively novel type of anime storming the West. No, the love and care that went into each and every episode of Haruhi is undeniable. This show still looks amazing. Season 1 was in 2006, and to be honest, you could release it today and it would still look really good. It wouldn't be a top-of-the-line anime, it's turning 15 years old this year, but it holds up remarkably well. Okay. Just a small example of how well made this show is. Take the festival episode. It's the big school cultural festival, and Kyoani is walking around school seeing all the exhibits when he ends up talking with his friends near the school entrance. And in the background you can see some girls arguing, but it's kind of blurry and you can barely make out the girl in the bunny girl outfit in the distance. Later you can see two girls running past Kyoani as he's talking to Saruya, one of them carrying a guitar bag. He gets lunch with his friends, and later when they're leaving, Kyoani turns around to tell off one of his friends for wanting to go around and hit on chicks. And behind him you can see two people in costume carrying more guitar cases running past the hallway. Then Kyoani decides to just go off on his own and chill in the music hall while some bands play. One of the bands is just Detroit Metal City, and I'm just shocked to see it in this anime of all places. DMC is just some weird shit. If you know, you know. It's a cool little reference to throw in here. All of these small little inconsequential moments are leading up to Haruhi and Yuki taking the stage for the God Knows sequence I mentioned earlier. I hadn't even noticed any of these until I was sitting down to write and had the episode up on my second monitor. It's these small little hints that the entire episode is centered around this moment, and that you're in for something truly special. It speaks to the level of thought Kyoani put into every single frame, rewarding people who watch through multiple times with little secrets like this all over the series. None of those moments are brought to your attention specifically. Again, I only just noticed them now. They did not need to go this hard for this, but they did. And it's incredible. Typically, I watch Haruhi dub because both voice casts are stellar, and I can really appreciate the animation more if I'm not reading subtitles at the same time. But for this sequence, I always change it back to the Japanese version, because Haruhi's Japanese voice actress, Aya Hirano, is a pop idol and an incredibly talented singer. Her energy and commitment to the role ring through every single line. Now, my strengths are well outside music critique, but this breakdown in Vice, I think, says it best.
From the intro's 4-count of the hi-hat, a simple cue otherwise, before exploding into a weaving guitar solo, God Knows is instrumentally pure joy, distilled into several minutes. If there was a song that could depict the resurrection of Dionysus, or the triumphant origins of the flock of white doves in a John Woo film, this would be it. Jabari Weeks for Vice.
Then you take the direction and quality of animation Kyoani throws out here, and it's just some breathtaking work. Utilizing rotoscoping, the team was able to capture the expression and detail of the actual band performing the song live, fully integrating their energy into these characters. The way Yuki moves her guitar as she solos, the sweat pouring down Haruhi's face as she belts it out as best as she can. You can feel the effort put into each and every movement from the band, the physicality as they put on the show of their lives. Once they're done, you can see the look of relief and joy on Haruhi's face. Happiness in a way you've never really seen from her before. Showstopper. It's an absolute showstopper and one of the best musical moments in all of anime. which for a non-musical anime, pretty goddamn impressive. But this isn't even the biggest song to come out of the show, because it wouldn't be a Haruhi video if we didn't talk about the Hara Hara Yukai. The ending theme to every Season 1 episode of Haruhi included Haruhi, Yuki, and Asahina doing a coordinated dance sequence together, cut with some stills from the show. Later on, there was a full version of the dance released, and it didn't take long for people to start imitating it. If TikTok dances were a thing back then, this would be all over the place. Like, take the most popular TikTok dance you know, times that by 10, and you get an idea of how popular this dance was. If you see a Haruhi cosplayer at a convention, it's a sure bet that they've practiced that dance. Hell, even I've practiced that dance, because back in 2009, my first ever cosplay was Kyoani. One of my friends was Haruhi, and my girlfriend at the time was Asahina. And I look just so sad in every picture I have of this, oh my god. I didn't even know this at the time, but there was 10 different versions of this song. One by each member of the SOS Brigade, and then a bunch of smaller characters get one, like Tsuruyu, Ryoko, Kyoani's little sister, Taniguchi, and Kimidori, a character that was in one brief scene and then never seen again. She gets a whole song. These versions aren't even just a different singer though, no, that would be far too easy. They changed the instruments on all of them, so Kyoani's sister has a very childlike version with a bunch of goofy sound effects. Kimidori's sounds like a really chill lullaby. Koizumi's feels like a pop star trying their hand at R&B, and it's amazingly fabulous. Kyoani's is my personal favorite because it's got some acoustic guitar and harmonica and sounds a lot like a country song. And through the entire thing, he sounds like he's just so done with this. Like Haruhi is right outside the recording booth making him sing along. It's so off the wall, and I love that. The anime's production team just loved to be weird, though. From the very start of things, the first episode of the series to air on TV is The Adventures of Makuru Asahina, which is an episode that is animated to look like a home movie that the SOS Brigade shot and Kyoani had to edit together in a single night for the school festival. It's weird, it looks really grainy, and they reuse shots repeatedly. And as your introduction to the series, it makes absolutely no sense. Then as the season goes on, it continues to make very little sense because the story is told completely out of order. Season 1 is told well out of chronological order, known as broadcast order, which is an artistic choice made by the Kyoani team and supported by many fans. This order is intended to make the first season feel like a kind of puzzle you're piecing together. Or I would personally liken it to walking in on someone halfway through a show and just sitting down and watching and figuring out the plot and who anyone is on your own. I find it to be a really interesting way to watch, and if you do give the show a try, then you should experience this viewing order for at least the first watch through. But after that, if you watch it again, just go in chronological order, it's much easier. So far, a lot of this video has been about Season 1, and personally, that's where a lot of my experience lies. If I was to think of this series nostalgically, like we're doing now, I would think about Season 1. Season 2, the entirety of Season 2, is something I came to a bit later. And the legacy of this season is very different. While Season 2 does have some really good episodes, character moments, and a lot of those classic Haruhi misadventures, the lead up to it took years though, which can take a little bit of that heat off of any fandom. And the marketing and announcement of the season left much to be desired. That, although, could be completely forgiven, completely forgotten if it wasn't for the true crime of Season 2, The Endless 8. The Endless 8 are 8 episodes of Season 2 dedicated to a plotline where Haruhi does not want to let summer break end. So the gang all live through the same last 2 weeks of summer break over and over again, with only small variations like clothing or camera angles. It's anime Groundhog's Day, but instead of this repeat cycle being communicated in a simple montage, it's just 8 full episodes of the show. Episodes 1 and 8 are the most varied, but episodes 2 through 7 are almost the exact same story told again and again and again and again and again. We're not gonna get into a lot of detail on this here since I never experienced this phenomenon week to week. I rarely, if ever, watch shows week by week and instead prefer to binge watch at my leisure, so I completely avoided all the drama surrounding this. For a more detailed rundown, I highly recommend the video Red Bar did on it a couple months ago, where they do a full rundown of the reaction and impact of one of the most infamous arcs in all of anime. It'll be in a card on this video and linked below, so check it out, it's a great time. For our purposes though, what's important to understand is that people waited nearly 3 years for Season 2 of one of the most popular anime in the world, and then over half of that 12 episode season was dedicated to telling the same story 8 times. I mean, it's a true experience to see the same story told 8 different ways, a true artistic decision in storytelling that makes you, the viewer, feel like you are actually trapped in a Groundhog Day type loop, that you are losing your mind the same way the characters are in the show. In that way, it is an absolutely one-of-a-kind experience. Also gotta have a brief aside for the season's opening theme, Super Driver, which has slowly become one of my all-time favorite anime openings. Sung by Aya Hirano, its energy is as relentless as Haruhi herself. Even through the Endless 8, when a new episode started with this banger, it was easy to get hyped up to watch more. Nothing beats the chorus for me, and the full version of this is even better at fully paying off these riffs. This is the only anime opening that is on my Spotify playlist. Sick opening or not though, season 2 was divisive to say the least, with the Endless 8 leaving a bad taste in everybody's mouth. This whole debacle, why the Endless 8 was 8 episodes long, really came about though because season 2 was supposed to have another major plot arc. And that arc was supposed to take up over half the season, but instead, it got shuffled and moved into the disappearance of Haruhi Suzumiya. So these 7 episodes that they had originally blocked out to fill that spot could either be replaced with filler content or the Endless 8, and, well, we all know what happened there. But was all of that suffering worth this? Was it worth it to sacrifice nearly the entirety of season 2 just so we could make a movie? Well, I actually hadn't seen the disappearance of Haruhi Suzumiya until about Christmas 2020. And seeing it for the first time is the entire reason we're doing this video here today. I had just finished my rewatch of season 1 and season 2, all in full chronological order, and by the end of it, I just wanted to cap it all off with the movie, which was a smart move on my part because there were so many callbacks and hints back to earlier episodes in season 1 and in season 2 that just make the viewing experience for the movie that much more rewarding. The premise is that Kyoani comes to school one day and finds that Haruhi isn't there, and no one around him remembers her. If you've ever met Haruhi though, it's impossible to not remember this weirdo. So Kyoani must go on an adventure to discover what happened to change his world and do what he can to change it back. This is a film that takes every aspect of these characters, Kyoani especially, and challenges them. Our snarky, perpetually tired, and pessimistic lead is repeatedly forced to fully evaluate his life in the past year that he's known Haruhi and try to learn how he wants his life to be going forward. I don't really want to get into a lot of details here because I believe you should experience this movie as blind as you can. You should also strap in because it's officially 2 hours and 45 minutes long. That time flew by for me though, and I really did not feel this runtime at all. Kyoani's team just went so hard on this movie, and to see them get to make such an ambitious project like this is all I could ask for. Their animation, their coloring, their score, it's all top notch, and I shouldn't really say much more than that. But when it comes to that question of was it all worth it, was it worth suffering what was done to season 2 for this movie, the answer unequivocally is yes. Yes, this movie was absolutely the very best way to tell this story, and whatever sacrifices had to be made to make that possible are worth it. You know, this movie's plot actually all takes place around Christmas, and it really was a weird coincidence that I also decided to watch all this movie around Christmas. It felt right. The world has a funny way of working out like that, I guess. It's weird. I never really considered the way that this show has intersected with my life in a lot of weird, specific ways that I only came to the realization about when I sat down to write this video. It was the first anime that truly sparked my interest in finding more than what was on TV. It led to relationships and friendships that not just expanded what kind of anime I was watching, but who I was watching it with. It really was a kind of turning point in my development as a person that was so much for the better, opening my eyes to a broader world that I had no experience in. So when I talk about Haruhi, especially season 1, it is personal. It's inescapably personal. Yeah, it was a worldwide phenomenon that changed anime around the globe, but that didn't mean anything to me. It didn't mean a single thing. All that mattered was that this show was unlike any anime that I had had the chance to see before. Now, with all of this behind it, you may be asking yourself, but where is Haruhi today? And that's actually a very simple answer. Like many other great series, such as Berserk, the greatest seinen manga of all time, or Hunter x Hunter, the greatest shonen manga of all time, the series creators just have large gaps in their release schedules for their source material. As a brief aside here, this whole passage was written well before the news of Kentaro Miura's passing, who, if you're not personally familiar with them, they are the creator of Berserk, and unfortunately they did pass away this May. After the news came out, I did consider removing all references to Berserk in this, but I still feel like it's very relevant to talk about those kind of long breaks that do have to come into creators' life cycles, especially when they are making incredible works. The pressure put on these creators to make something that's living up to the hype is immense, and the stress of that obviously was felt in Miura's case, and I'm sure in all of these creators' cases. So this is just a small reminder to always treasure the works that you do get from these creators, and understand that there are people behind these stories who need time and need rest and need to maintain their bodies so that they can move forward with these stories. We're going to get back to the video now, and I'm sorry for bringing things down a little bit like this, but I do feel like it was an important aside to add in here. In Haruhi's case though, a new light novel has recently released, and hey, maybe at this point there's enough material for a third anime season, but at the time of writing, there's been no development on that front. The last major Haruhi-related animation was a spin-off anime set in an alternate world from the main anime called The Disappearance of Nagato Yuki-chan, which is a series I don't have much to say on, honestly. I would love Kyoani to take another crack at this series, and I think if they did that, you would see a lot of that old fandom roar back to life. Now, it wouldn't be as fiery or as passionate as it was back in the day, but it would still be there. The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya is always going to carry that love and respect for it, as long as it doesn't pull a Berserk 2016 and just clang my soul into dust. No one can say what the future holds for the SOS Brigade, but I hope this video has helped light a fire in your soul to give this anime a shot, or if you haven't, revisit it for the first time in quite a while. To end this off, I also hope it's lit a fire in your fingers to leave a comment down below so you can just tell me what your experience with Haruhi is. Is this the first time you're hearing about it in depth? Have you had a long fascination with the series? Did the Endless 8 scare you off? Are you just someone who would watch since 2006 and are angrily typing about how I'm completely mischaracterizing the entire fandom in your perspective? Either way, leave a comment down below. I make a point to try to respond to as many as I can. Hit subscribe if you want to support the channel. Hit the bell if you want to know when more videos are coming out. Like this video. If you don't like it, you could dislike it also. Either way, it helps the SEO. But yeah, thank you very much for watching to the end of this video, and I want you to have a great day, a great night, or whatever it is you're having. And stay rad.